How you doing? It's Fred Ward coming to you live from this new podcast we about to create called Count Time. I'm really excited to get this off the ground. We got some amazing people that's going to be on these shows. And just want to let you know a little bit about what Count Time was designed to do. What we realized is there's over 2 million people in Ohio alone that's been impacted by felony convictions. But because it carries a scarlet letter, a lot of times people don't want to identify that they even have a felony, or they want to just leave it behind them. So we want to create a podcast with a lot of education and a narrative that allows us to understand how we actually move from our current situation into a better place in society. So Count Time Podcast is going to consist of episodes such as Duly Convicted. Why Duly Convicted as an episode? Because we realized that slavery was never abolished. It was reframed under the 13th Amendment Duly Convicted clause. And so we want to really lift that and allow people to really understand that if you done caught a felony in America, you have actually inherited the enslavement period of yesterday, right? We got other topics we're going to talk about called the Great Divide. Now, the Great Divide is we also, in thinking about count time and how do we get people to identify as a collective body, right, to be able to build power in a collective way, we realize that some people don't want to identify, right? And so we realize that it's a great divide between even those that have been impacted. For the people that fight for different legislation and policy changes, whether it's around housing, the 2,900 collateral sanctions that exist, federal and state in Ohio. So we got people that come home from being incarcerated or just getting a felony conviction in court, and they still fight for those type of rights and practices. We realize for many of us, having a felony conviction ain't nothing that they want to brag about or talk about. And so they live their life, right, putting that behind them, right? But we also want to take that scarlet letter off of that shame that people walk with, and let people know that even though you might have committed a crime at some point in your life, if you done changed your way of thinking and behaving, and you done moved on with your life to where now you're a productive citizen, we want you to be able to hold your head up high, right? And let people know that even though you might have done something in your past, it don't define who you are. So we want to talk about that too on the podcast. And there's other topics. We want to talk about the 3% rule, some groundbreaking research from Erica Chenoweth, right, about the 3% rule. And she wrote an amazing book, Why Civil Non-Resistance Works, right? And that's very interesting. And so when we talk about the 3% rule, we'll get more into it during the show, but it's going to really talk about how numbers matter when it comes to talking about changing policy and legislation in any particular society. And so stay mindful of that 3% rule. Fascinating work. We also got topics that's going to look more in depth with Harriet Tubman and the rest of the superintendents, right? And what we need to finish what they started, right? Because they was on a pathway with the Underground Railroad to actually do a thing collectively together in the world. And I think that that didn't get accomplished to the degree that they wanted it to, but we can pick up that baton and we can finish what they started. So I'm excited to get into that conversation. It's going to be a really robust conversation. And, just really thinking about Count Time Podcast and why it's so important to have this podcast at this day and age, right, in our history, is because it's millions and millions of individuals that have been duly convicted in America that have yet to really feel that they connected to democracy and that their voice matter and that they vote matter for that part. This last election, we had 90 million individuals across the country that was eligible to vote but didn't desire to cast their vote at all. And so I think that having this podcast, Count Time, it'll really give a different perspective on what power look like, on why your vote matter as a strategy, and how we can actually change not only the hearts and minds of people, but the legislation that is not in the best interest of the collective body of citizens. So many of y'all just heard Count Time. as a narrative. But why is this so important? The reason why we know that Count Time was picked and chose, because anybody, male or female, if you didn't spend any time inside of a correctional institution in any state in the country, there is a standardized message that they say when they want you to be counted. And they actually do it 3 times a day. When you hear that word count time, it's gonna jar your memory. It might even trigger you, because it's gonna bring you back to a place when you understand you didn't have all your rights as a full citizen, right? So Count Time is a very valuable name as it relates to this podcast for the population we actually looking to serve.